Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're joined by Steve Bohls, who is the creator and founder of Veiled Resin, or possibly coined Bolzian Art. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. We're off to a good start in that there's some beautiful pieces of art in here.
Thank you.
And you did these.
I did.
You're the artist behind it.
Far too much trial and error.
Yep. We've got Darth Vader and Keanu Reeves.
Of course.
I don't know who that is.
John Wick.
Okay.
I mean, you know,
really good with guns.
Yeah.
Ballerina?
A dancer. So, my wife was a ballerina for about 17 years. And so,
very cool.
Yeah.
And a beautiful wolf, gray wolf, Arctic wolf. Yeah. The cool thing is when we were arranging all of this, we have some lighting in here. Obviously it's a podcast studio. It changes when the light's behind it. So
it does.
You could have a bunch of people here with wine and cheese and move the light around, and then they could pontificate on what the art means to them just by moving the light around. So there's some uniqueness to this and some obviously ingenuity and creativity. In the best way you can, explain how this art came to be.
Sure. So it's a strange mix of engineering and art. I have a kind of a weird background. I did a master's in business, and then I did software engineering. I worked for Adobe for a number of years, and then I ended up quitting to do full-time writing. I did science fiction fantasy novels for a little while, and then segued into doing this. This is, like I said, kind of a mix of those two left and right brains, I guess, where it starts off as most art does, with a simple sketch. And then I take that sketch and do a vector tracing of it to get it computerized with hard lines. And then I take the vector tracing and build out CAD files, which are computer files that allow a CNC machine to follow certain tool paths that I set. And then I take a 1/2-inch sheet of acrylic and put it face down. That face is paper masked and sealed and protected. And the entire time that the piece is being worked on, it is face down, and I don't get to see that finished product as it is being made. It's clamped in place and not removed for a couple weeks. And then I, color by color, cut into the back side of it in reverse, and with those cavities, clean them out, and then pour epoxy resin into those spaces. And then once it's cured, then I get to start on the next color, cut straight through the epoxy resin that I poured and the acrylic layers, and then pour another color. So it's this weird layer by layer, kind of ends up looking stained glass, which is really a little bit of the origin of it. I had this is a new iterative process that I developed having worked on stained glass. I got really fascinated by this idea of integrating engineering with art, and worked with Waterjet for a little while doing these slabs of aluminum where I'd cut out shapes, and then I could do super intricate stained glass cutouts on the Waterjet and then inlay it into those recesses. And it was difficult to work with. It never ended up being what I had hoped it could be. And then I thought, well, what if I fill those recesses with resin instead? So we tried that, and it was fine, but I thought there's a better way to do this. And so that's when I started with acrylic instead of aluminum, and realized I could create the image on the back, and then at the very end, flip it over, and the image basically took shape on the front in higher clarity because of that concave shape of the tool when it's cutting in.
Very cool. So I love that you don't know how it's going to look until the grand reveal, right? Because you've got Bob Ross, who, if he screws up, he just
paint, another happy tree.
Yeah. Happy. So Darth Vader here, there's, I don't know, 20 different colors, 15. So each one of those was its own step.
Yeah. Each time we start on another color or texture, I'll cut in, and then you pour that one color. Each color is a mix of 4 or 5 different mica powders, pigments, dyes. That's mainly what I use. I do use some paint in there to get a little bit more matte tones. Darth Vader doesn't have any matte tones in it. In person, you can see it's got a lot more luminescence than some of the other pieces. The wolf will look a little bit more matte because it's going with more of an organic look. And so then if you mix paints in there, it will mute the colors quite a bit, so they won't be as vibrant and bold. But I wanted some of the bold characters. I mean, Darth Vader, John Wick, those are some hardcore characters, and then I wanted those to really pop. And so I didn't use any acrylics in those, or any acrylic paint. I just used mica powders and translucent dyes and pigments.
Yeah. So from start to finish, Darth Vader was weeks, months?
Yeah. So if you're talking art to finish, where it's, I'm starting on the sketch, and then I'm doing the vector, and then I'm doing the CAD, and then I'm doing the building process. Half of it is before I start the building process, and then half of it's after. And I would say most of the pieces, 100 to 200 hours from the very beginning to finish.
All right.
And then you get to cut off a bunch of that time when you have that vector design. And, for example, this is the third try at Darth Vader. The first 2 are in some landfill somewhere, but
so it didn't work out to your liking.
It did not. Yeah. Well, a lot of them, the problem that you mentioned with not being able to see it until the very end is that you never know what things you're doing wrong. And the front was sealed up on Vader. So the very first one that I tried, I wanted it to have a super deep cut. Because in person, you can see that there's a lot of dimensionality to these pieces. And I was really trying to accentuate that with Vader. And so I went as deep as I could, as close to the surface of that acrylic as I could. The only problem is that resin, when it cures, it contracts and to such a tension that it'll actually pull in the acrylic. And so what happened was it pulled that bottom layer of acrylic up. And so when I did another cut, it ended up piercing the piece, cutting straight through. And I didn't know because the protective cover on the bottom was still intact. And so when I poured the resin, it just seeped into the entire piece, and it was a mess. But it's kind of this weird process of hoping things are going the way that you expect. For example, the wolf, it was part of a series that I did of 3 animals, a bear and an elk. And then the bear that I was working on the first iteration, I ended up accidentally shifting the piece. And I don't know when I would have done this because I keep these pieces clamped in place, but somehow either on the computer side or on the machining side, the piece got shifted a full inch down and to the left. And I just kept going because I didn't know anything was wrong. And I get to the final image, and you have basically half the colors are in place where they should be, and half the colors are offset by an inch diagonal. And it ruined the whole piece because obviously it's just like a jumble of colors instead of a finished piece. So it is always a trick. There are a ton of pieces that get ruined along the way.
Yeah. So that's 100, 200 hours of lessons learned.
Yes. Well, basically a year of lessons learned. It was since this process was something I developed from the very beginning, the entire first 6 months of it was a disaster. I kept wanting it to work, and it just wasn't getting there. There were so many things that were roadblocks because I didn't have a manual on some path to follow because I was developing it as the pieces kept getting destroyed. Yeah. And I keep having to remind myself that it was those destroyed pieces that really made the process what it is today.
Yeah. I like that for whatever reason. I know it might be painful for you, but it's kind of like a farmer planting in the spring, doing the best, or like shipbuilders, right? Eventually they smash the champagne and it goes in, and it's like,
you're just on the edge of your seat. You're like, okay, don't sink.
The wolf, not knowing anything about this other than what you've just taught me, seems like it would take a little bit more time with those trees and the ears. Seems like there's a little bit more detail to that. Is that true, or am I just
No, absolutely. So Vader was actually one of the first designs that I did. I didn't know the thresholds on how I could cut, and the entire process of cutting this has totally evolved over the last few years. And with Vader, you can see that a lot of the areas are significantly wider. They're bulky. They basically allow for cleaner pores, and I worried about getting these narrow channels, and how I would tackle that, particularly when you get with the wild complexity of like the John Wick splattering in the back there, because initially I was doing these different cut methods that were taking enormous amount of cut time, and the longer a piece is being cut, the more expensive it becomes, not only from the machining and the electricity and all that, but we're going through bit sets, these tungsten carbide bits like crazy, and they're expensive bits. You're paying $60 to $80 per bit, and when you're having to go through half a dozen because you messed up, makes the pieces really expensive to create. All the materials are super expensive, but those narrow intricacies that you're talking about kind of took place after I developed better, really better programs, better methods to cut, better protocols really on start to finish process. And so it's allowed me to do significantly more detailed things. The dancer here is definitely one of the more detailed ones because of those narrow channels. You get up close, and it's probably harder to see on screen. But you can start identifying a lot of the features, the facial features, the all those kind of fine lines. And one of the issues there is when you get too skinny and too narrow on those channels, you have to go back through. It's going to, like, the bit is going to kind of burr the side where it fogs it up, and you have to go back through with a razor blade and carve off all of those areas, and it becomes really challenging, and something that has a lot of wall surface area like the dancer, as opposed to Vader, which is just a fraction of the wall surface area of the dancer.
Yeah, you mentioned stained glass earlier, and when you're in a cathedral or a place that has a lot of it, you look at it and that's millions of hours of compounded human trial and error, and you're just kind of on your own.
Yes, it's been so annoying.
Yeah.
It's been really, really tough to be able to figure that out. The entire thing was I thought I was starting stained glass and aluminum, and the entire medium shifted. And so it really has been me trying to be okay with throwing away an idea. And I don't think I would have been able to do it had I not gone through, decades of writing in a fiction sense. I spent a dozen novels before I ended up getting a successful publishing deal, really having to throw idea after idea out the window and restarting. First editorial letter I got when I got my, I published through Disney for my first series, and they sent me a 20-page single-space letter on, hey, here's all the stuff we need you to change.
Oh, wow.
It was like so crushing when I got that letter, because these are broad-reaching things. Oh, this chapter doesn't work. Oh, you need to cut half your characters. Oh, you need to add this character. I mean, we're talking like big things, and it really, I think, gave me that, I don't know, the thick skin that I needed to be able to do that on my own without an editorial letter saying, here's what you need to change. But instead, me being able to let go of what wasn't working and move on, sometimes in this sense, to an entirely different medium.
Yeah, you've learned a lot of patience, and there's probably all sorts of life lessons in that, and don't have enough time on this podcast, but a lot could be drawn from thick skin and patience. Yeah, being at art shows or fundraisers and things, you'll meet the artist and be like, that's really great. Oh, it's $50,000. It's like, no, go jump off a bridge, then pound sand. And my experience has been they have very, very thin skin, mostly like painters and those types of artists. But do you find that folks, when you tell this story of, I've screwed up a bunch, thrown a bunch away, and there's computers and drill bits, and there's actual work that they relate more to that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I do see the value in your art. I think it's beautiful, but I also see that a lot of work went into it.
It has actually been really remarkable. And you mentioned art shows, and art shows in particular, you get a high volume of traffic of people coming through, asking about the process. The number one comment we hear is, "I've never seen anything like this before." And so I have the opportunity many, many times to explain the process and go over it in great detail again and again and again. And what's really exciting about that is suddenly people really do understand the value. I talk about all the materials involved, and it is an enormous expense per piece. And then every time I make one and have to throw it away, it's like that is part of what was so challenging in the very beginning. And I think, I don't know a lot of the mediums that are criticized in that way. I do know, as having done the artist route twice, once with writing and once with um, physical visual art. It is not. If people think it's a get rich quick scheme, there are way easier ways to do that.
Yeah.
Like just working a normal job,
Yeah.
And this is something that requires so much of the person to build the ability to be able to have the art there. It just these last couple of years have been so challenging in working these 12 to 16-hour days in the garage, where I'm stuck in a respirator and sweating like crazy and working at this machine for all day every day, and none of that is really calculated in terms of, oh, I'm charging this much per hour and stuff, because if you're doing it for that reason, you won't last.
Yeah.
Period. It is you have to find a better reason to build art, and that reason has to be something that carries you through from the beginning, the exciting parts, through the really challenging middle parts, and to the burnout at the very end. And my reason has always been that there is something special about sitting there at an art show or somewhere else where you get to watch people's feet as they are walking and they are looking back and forth at these booths, and then they slow, and you see their feet start to slow, and they turn and they look at your booth, and they just stop and they pause and they look at it, and then they tilt their head and they're confused, and then they walk closer, and then there's this brightness, this excitement in them. And it is so exciting to see that change in that enthusiasm in them when they get to see the art in person and it moves them.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask the next question, because I'm kind of a knuckle dragging Neanderthal. The exciting part was when they reach in their back pocket for their checkbook. Well, that doesn't apply to you, it doesn't seem like, because there's more to you and the art than that. But let's talk about the business side, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going to keep these all in your garage. I would assume you'd like them to be out in the world. How do you get these out in front of the world in 2024? How do you kind of think through pricing? How do you think through getting a following? Mm-hmm. All of that stuff.
That is a really good question that I wish I knew all the answers to. We've been really fortunate to where when I actually took all of this stuff out of the garage, I basically had it piled in there until late September 2023. And we didn't really bring it out and show people until mid-October. I mean, I was showing people before then, but not really, not actually trying to sell it. Again, there were a lot of mistakes and road bumps along the way, but October is when we really took it out and said, okay, let's see if we can make this happen. And fortunately for me, there's been a lot of organic enthusiasm. You get people who come see the art, they get really excited about it. I've gone to a few shows, and you build this natural grouping of people that gather, and they're like, hey, this is really cool. There's a lot of discussion involved with it because it's something unique. It's something different from all the other art booths that they've seen. And so there's the organic conversation that develops from that. We've tried to do some social media stuff where we are filming the process. I'm really open about the process. It's something that is so challenging to do that I'm not worried about anybody, coming along and trying to replicate it. But we've been really open about the process. And so when we produce those videos, we try to say, hey, check this out. This is something new. And that gets some excitement. We have, I have a guy, couple guys who do sales for it. We just made a good connection in Vegas with a gallery that is interested in having our stuff there. And so it's been this slow process that doesn't really have a great answer to that question of yours, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like a creative or a software engineer. I'm not a business and marketing guy. And so it's been a learning process for me in that way.
Yeah. But it sounds like there's lots of avenues to monetize this, whether it's galleries or art shows.
I think so. It's everybody has a different idea. Like when I talk to people who are interested in doing marketing, sales, business, for this, it has, and I really should be more a business client. Like I said, I ended up doing business as my degree, but like, when we come to the business side of it, the thing that's interesting is our demographic is split so wildly in terms of content, age, gender. We are also right around the middle line. And so when I have people who want to get involved, they get excited about, hey, we could take it this way. Hey, we could take it this way. Hey, we could take it this way. And I think it does lend itself to a more versatile business opportunity than other art might, particularly given its kind of that striking, unique look to it, as well as being a new innovative process and the colors, which aren't seen in a lot of other art.
Yeah. For sure. I've met a lot of artists over the years at art shows and things like that, and compliment their work and say I'd love, and I try to commission them, even though I don't have two nickels to rub together, but it's always at some point, what if I ever have money? It's usually like an elk or a buffalo or something for baseball. Do you ever get people that just commission you and it's like, this is what I want?
Yeah, so we do a lot of commissions, custom commissions. Sometimes it's, hey, can you do this image that you've already done, but make some changes here? Sure, we can do that. We've had a bunch of just from scratch commissions where, I had somebody who had some IP that he wanted me to do some iterations on. He didn't even have like base art, nothing. He just said, hey, I kind of have this general idea. What do you think? And I said, let's go through the process. And so it was this, he wanted 4 pieces. They were fairly big. And with each piece, I do a start to finish process on it. I do sketches, submit him the sketches. If he likes those, cool. If he doesn't, let's do a different sketch. And once we had the sketch solidified, then I started working on color blocking, where I took that sketch and vectorized it, chose colors. Some of them worked for his home, some of them didn't. And we rearranged the colors. And once we had a final vectorized version, you can count on the finished product to look very, very similar to the finished vector art. And that's kind of the process we've repeated over, multiple customers with custom commissions. And they're all different. Like all the custom commissions tend to be pretty different. Some people are super easygoing. You decide, you whatever, you're the artist. Some are extremely rigid. I'm working on a 4 foot by 8 foot piece for Park City right now that the client's very, very, has a very clear idea of what she wants in mind. And so it's trying to capture her vision and align it with mine instead of other clients that have wanted me to do my version of something instead.
Yeah. Very fun. Because then you've got the engineering side, the artistic side, and then the human psychology side of what are you talking about? Or, okay, we'll make that happen. Different personalities. Well, very cool. Well, overall, like the future for you, do you envision, or do you have goals of like, I'd love stuff in galleries, or I just love stuff in people's homes? Is there a certain angle that you are more enticed towards?
Yeah. So, I mean, galleries have always been something of interest to us because I do love custom commissions. It is this blending of my vision with the client's vision. But the thing about the galleries is I get to do basically my raw vision, and we get to see the reactions from people, because it's at galleries, you're not usually going to get galleries and saying, well, I want this changed on the piece. You're looking at what's available at that gallery. And so galleries have always been something that's been really enticing to me. And that's presently where I'm looking to focus. It is always really exciting when, I had a few people text me just a couple of weeks ago. There was Gen Con on the East Coast, and I had a big business that commissioned a ton of pieces, and they brought all those pieces to Gen Con, and had some people say, hey, this is your art. I'm so excited I saw this. And that's always really exciting to see other people being excited about the work that you've done.
Yeah. How can people find out more about you and your work, see it, and then, ultimately, hopefully, if they want a piece, how can they commission you?
Of course. So our website is veiledresin.com. There's really no other Veiled Resin anything out there. So all of our handles and socials are Veiled Resin. Just, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that. It's all just going to be Veiled Resin. And so if you go to veiledresin.com, we have a few galleries. We have some videos on how the stuff's made, and there should be a tab, Contact Us. You can just contact directly through the site. You can, they have a little chat box they can fill out, or we have contact information on the Contact Us. You can always send me a personal email. Some people have done that instead. They'll just Google my name and find my personal email, and it's just sbohls, BOHLS @gmail.com. But yeah,
there you go.
If you look for a second, you can find us usually.
Color me impressed. Thanks for bringing this artwork here. It's always fun to see what people create out of their minds, and I really like it. I wish it could stay here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
You bet.